Details emerging in a murder investigation in the Bronx. Detectives looking for the boyfriend of a woman they say was stabbed and tortured for more than a week in Fordham. Investigators believe 21-year-old Princesa Encarnacion-Soto was tied to a bed, attacked with a hammer, and stabbed, and then thrown down a stairwell. Meanwhile, the boyfriend's mother is under arrest and facing murder charges. 54-year-old Naida Jorge was arrested after detectives noticed a trail of blood coming from her apartment. Once inside, they say they found a bag of bloody clothes.
The sound of crying echoed faintly through the hallway of a Bronx apartment building. It was the kind of sound people hear and try to ignore, soft, broken, uncertain. But that night, it wouldn't stop. Behind the door of apartment 4B, a young woman was trapped in her own private hell. Her name was Princesa Encarnacion-Soto, and for days, no one had seen her come out. When the police finally forced their way in, the silence that followed was deafening. Neighbors gathered outside, whispering what they had heard. She was trying to leave him. Inside, officers uncovered something so horrifying that even the most hardened among them stood frozen. The scene didn't speak of rage alone. It spoke of control, cruelty, and a love story that had turned into a nightmare. Princesa was only 21 years old. A bright, loving soul who believed that walking away would finally set her free. But freedom for Princesa came too late. Her story isn't just about violence. It's about the quiet warning signs we often overlook, the messages left unanswered, the sudden silences, the fear masked as loyalty. How does someone who once swore to love you become the reason you never make it out alive? Before we go deeper, tell me, what city are you watching from? Let's see how far Princesa's story travels, because this is one story the world needs to hear. Before she became a headline, Princesa Encarnacion-Soto was a daughter, a sister, and a friend. Born and raised in the Bronx, she grew up surrounded by noise and life, the kind of neighborhood where laughter spilled out of windows and everybody knew everybody's business. It was a community that looked out for its own, but sometimes even in the closest neighborhoods, danger hides behind closed doors. Princesa was just 21, but she carried herself like someone older, resilient, kind, always smiling even when life threw her curveballs. Friends remember her as the girl who lit up a room, the one who could turn bad days around with a laugh. She had dreams of independence, dreams of building something better for herself after years that hadn't been easy. She wanted love, real love, and peace. Then, she met Robert Strother. At first, he seemed like everything she had ever wanted, charming, protective, attentive. He made her feel seen in a world that often looked right through young women like her. But with time, that protection began to tighten. What started as concern became control. What sounded like love began to echo like warning bells. Their relationship was passionate, volatile, and increasingly dangerous. Those who saw them together said there were moments when Robert's eyes would change, when affection shifted into something darker. The kind of change that makes you wonder if you really know the person standing next to you. And slowly, that protection turned into possession. And when Princesa finally tried to leave, that control turned deadly. For a brief moment, Princesa thought she had escaped. She'd packed what little she could carry and left the Bronx behind, heading to Rhode Island, a quiet, healing place where her family could protect her. There, for the first time in years, she could breathe. The constant fear, the walking on eggshells feeling, gone. She slept through the night without waking up to yelling. She laughed again. She began to imagine a life without Robert Strother, a life where she could finally be free. But abusers have a way of finding their way back into your mind long before they find their way to your door. Robert called, texted, pleaded. His messages shifted from anger to desperation. I've changed. You're all I have. I can't live without you. Each apology came wrapped in guilt, every promise laced with manipulation. And slowly, bit by bit, he wore her down. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that the man she once loved was still somewhere inside him. Against her family's advice, Princesa returned to New York. She told herself it would be different this time. That love could heal what had been broken. But what awaited her in the Bronx wasn't love. Robert had convinced her to move into a new apartment on Grand Concourse, one he shared with his mother, Naida Jorge. To Princesa, it seemed like a chance to rebuild. A fresh start. What she didn't know was that she wasn't moving into a home. She was walking straight into a trap. In that apartment, behind closed doors, the cycle of control began again. But this time, it would spiral far beyond anything she or anyone around her could have imagined. For days, the fourth-floor apartment at Grand Concourse in the Bronx looked quiet from the outside. No unusual movement. No visitors. Just the faint hum of traffic and the occasional slam of a hallway door. But inside apartment 4B, a nightmare was unfolding, one that no one in the building could have imagined. Neighbors later told police they'd heard faint thuds, sometimes muffled cries, other times the sound of someone pacing or dragging furniture. But it was New York, noise was normal. People mind their business. And in that silence, Princesa Encarnacion-Soto was living her final days. What began as a second chance, a reconciliation after months apart, had turned into a week of captivity and terror. After returning from Rhode Island, Princesa hoped for peace. She hoped Robert Strother, the man she once loved, had changed. But the moment she stepped back into his world, his charm evaporated. The apartment became her cage. Her every movement watched, her phone taken, her voice silenced. In the small, cluttered bedroom she shared with him, the door stayed locked. Strother's paranoia grew by the hour. He accused her of betrayal, demanded answers that didn't exist, and convinced himself she was seeing someone else. The line between love and hate disintegrated. What had once been affection twisted into control, and then into cruelty. Over the course of several days, Strother subjected Princesa to a brutal pattern of abuse and torment. Police would later find evidence that told a chilling story. Bloodstains wiped from walls, ropes used to restrain her, and signs of repeated assaults meant to inflict pain, not just physically, but psychologically. He wanted her to suffer, to feel the weight of his delusion that she had betrayed him. And while this horror unfolded, his mother, Nida Jorge, was there. Instead of helping Princesa, she chose to help her son. When the violence grew too loud, she turned up the TV. When the blood smeared across the floor, she cleaned it. When her son's rage turned deadly, she didn't call for help, she tried to cover it up. Prosecutors would later say that she scrubbed parts of the apartment, moved items to hide evidence, and helped conceal the crime even after it was over. By the time it ended, Princesa was barely alive. Strother and his mother reportedly moved her body out of the apartment, down into the stairwell of the building. There in that cold, dimly lit space, she was left, battered, broken, and fading fast. A neighbor found her soon after and called 911, but was too late. When the paramedics arrived, the scene was haunting. Blood, bruises, and silence. Princesa had endured multiple stab wounds, blunt force trauma, and injuries that spoke to days of suffering. This wasn't a single act of rage. It was prolonged torture, a calculated destruction of a young woman's spirit and body. The police began their investigation immediately. Inside the apartment, what they discovered shocked even seasoned detectives. The home was in disarray, filthy, reeking of decay, and still showing signs of struggle. Every room whispered the same message: she had fought to live.
An arrest in the alleged torture and murder of a young woman in the Bronx. Investigators charged 27-year-old Robert Strother with murder, manslaughter, and concealment of a human corpse. Police had been searching for him in the death of 21-year-old Princesa Encarnacion-Soto. Her body was found back on July 22nd in a building off the Grand Concourse. She had suffered several stab wounds. Investigators believe Strother was her ex-boyfriend and that he tied her up and beat her before killing her.
By the time word spread through the Bronx, disbelief turned into collective grief. This wasn't just another crime statistic. This was a daughter, a friend, a young woman who had dreams and people who loved her. And as news cameras gathered outside the building, one headline echoed through social media. Tortured and left to die, the Bronx cries for Princesa. Her story wasn't just one of violence, it was one of betrayal by the man she trusted and by the silence of those who could have helped. If you believe love should never hurt, hit like. It helps us tell more stories that matter. And let's make sure no one forgets Princesa Encarnacion-Soto. By the time police pieced together what had happened inside apartment 4B, Strother had vanished. He'd slipped away before officers arrived, leaving behind a trail of destruction and a mother accused of helping him clean it up. For days, the city buzzed with one question: where was Robert? Detectives launched a massive manhunt across New York City and beyond. Flyers went up, surveillance footage was pulled from every nearby corner store, subway, and intersection. His face, once familiar to neighbors, was suddenly plastered on wanted posters. The NYPD worked with the U.S. Marshal Service, believing he might try to flee the state. Social media erupted with fury and heartbreak. Friends of Princesa flooded comment sections, sharing her photos, her smile, her story, demanding that the man responsible face justice. Days turned into a week, then a break. A public tip came in after new surveillance photos were released showing Strother walking through the Bronx in a hoodie and face mask, moving like a ghost among the living. The marshals tracked him down, cornering him before he could disappear again. The arrest was quiet but tense. Robert Strother was finally in custody. When officers brought him in, Strother looked nothing like the man who had once smiled beside Princesa in pictures. He looked hollow, detached, as if even he couldn't believe the reality of what he'd done. Authorities later revealed he'd been hospitalized shortly after his capture, though details about his condition were never disclosed. Meanwhile, his mother, Naida Jorge, was arrested on multiple charges: manslaughter, concealment of a human corpse, and tampering with evidence. Prosecutors accused her of trying to erase the horror from that apartment, as if scrubbing away the blood could undo the truth. But nothing could. The damage was permanent, and the community would never forget it.
On that Bronx stabbing, Princesa Encarnacion-Soto was stabbed to death on July 22nd inside of an apartment building in Fordham Heights. Tonight, her boyfriend is charged with her killing. We have CitizenNet video showing Robert Strother being taken into custody. Police already charged another suspect in the case, Strother's mother. News 4's Melissa Colorado joins us live in Grand Concourse tonight with the latest on the investigation. And Melissa, we understand he just appeared in front of a judge. What happened?
That's right, Rand. You can see these photos of Princesa Encarnacion-Soto. They remain posted outside of the apartment building where she was found stabbed to death. And police say they have arrested the man responsible, Princesa's boyfriend, but he's not the only one who is in custody. Police say they have also arrested the boyfriend's mother.
I can't believe it.
The mother of 21-year-old Princesa Encarnacion-Soto beaming with gratitude upon hearing the news that police have finally arrested her daughter's killer, more than a week after police found Encarnacion-Soto in an apartment building near 183rd Street in the Fordham section of the Bronx with stab wounds and evidence of torture all over her body. Cell phone video from Friday shows police taking into custody the victim's boyfriend, 27-year-old Robert Strother, in a park steps away from the crime scene and escorting him to a nearby precinct.
I want to see him face. I want to see him face and tell him, you did kill my daughter, my beautiful princess, and you go in jail for all your life.
Police say Strother had help in committing and covering up the murder. Strother's mother, 54-year-old Naida Jorge, also charged with murder, manslaughter, hiding the victim's body, and tampering with evidence. And while these two arrests will not bring her daughter back, Jessibel Soto says her princess can now rest in peace.
I'm so happy.
And if convicted of murder, both mother and son face life without parole or a minimum sentence of 15 to 40 years in prison. That's latest here in the Fordham section of the Bronx. I'm Melissa Colorado.
Princesa's story is not just about tragedy, it's about awakening. It's a reminder that love without safety isn't love at all, and silence in the face of abuse can be deadly. Every bruise ignored, every cry unheard, adds to a cycle that too many young women never escape. If we want to honor Princesa's memory, we have to start by listening, by believing survivors, by noticing the signs, by speaking up even when it's uncomfortable. Because her story isn't just hers anymore. It belongs to every voice still trapped behind closed doors. If you believe every woman deserves freedom from fear, hit like, share her story, and subscribe. Your engagement doesn't just grow this channel. It helps us bring real stories of justice, healing, and hope to light.